Hi, I'm Tom Nelson, senior member of the Pope and Young Club. We're in Chatfield, Minnesota today, home of the Pope and Young Club. And to you, as a Pope and Young Club member, if you haven't taken the time to visit the Pope and Young Museum, I'm going to today invite you to come on a short visual tour and show you exactly what you're missing.
And of course, after the Civil War, they were not allowed to own guns. And so they picked up a bow and started doing some hunting. And so with Will and Maurice Thompson, we owe quite a bit to them as kind of acquainting people with hunting with a bow and arrow.
So you're looking at the late 1800s. And
Yes, 1878. And when Will and Maurice, in fact, they penned this Witchery of Archery, which is considered a classic.
Yes, it's a collector's item.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So they basically were some of the very first pioneers, and it's kind of interesting because you said they weren't allowed to have firearms, so they used their archery tackle basically, not so much as a hobby as a necessity.
Yes, and he was the last of his tribe, and he was truly a Stone Age person, the last Stone Age person in North America. And prior to coming out of the wilderness in 1911, Ishii had never seen matches. He'd never seen white man. He didn't no steel, no nothing of modern times at all.
So he was living just like a Native American would have been in the when Columbus came.
Or before, yes. He was truly Stone Age. And so that was, he came out of the wilderness, and of course, to start with, they didn't really know who he was or what he was.
Did he come stumbling into a town? Or
yes, he came into the town of Ortonville, continuing on into Saxton Pope's era, and several bows that Saxton Pope made. And of course, no manufacturers then. They made all of their own equipment.
What were some of the materials that they used, Glenn?
Most of it was yew wood or sage. That was kind of their two preferred.
So it was like a solid billet.
Yes.
And then they spent a lot of time just shaving them down.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable amount of hours of as far as actual hands-on work involved in that process. Mm-hmm. But still, I mean, they're almost like a work of art for me to look at them. I mean, they're beautiful, still in fantastic shape.
Well, one of the bows that we have here is a bow and an arrow that Saxton Pope used when he shot his first bear in Northern California, and that's what we're trying to depict in this next diorama. Here is a figure of Saxton Pope and a bear. And Art Young came on the scene next. A mutual friend of theirs, Will Compton, introduced Art Young to Saxton Pope and to Ishii. Of course, is the one that is Simba Blood is the name of it, and that's the one that Art Young used in Africa.
That, if I recall, was a 90-pound bow.
Yes, it was. Art Young shot a little bit heavier bow than Saxton Pope did. But, the middle bow here is the one that Art Young used in Alaska on his trip. The top one is the one that he used. It's called Old Grizzly. He used it when they hunted grizzly bears in Yellowstone.
Which is a story all to itself.
It is, yes. Well, the next diorama that we're trying to highlight here is, of course, Art Young and his hunting adventures in Alaska. And he went up there 2 different summers, in 1922 and 1923, and hunted almost every type of animal in Alaska. He hunted moose, caribou, sheep, goats, brown bear, and even went on a polar bear hunt while he was there in Alaska. This is a Dall sheep that Art Young shot in Alaska in 1922, and it's shown on his film Alaskan Adventures. And the polar bear was one that he shot. The next diorama that we're trying to highlight is Fred Bear, and we picked his hunt on the Little Delta River in Alaska as kind of a place to highlight Fred Bear. Of course, Fred attended one of Art Young's lectures in Detroit, Michigan, And Art was Young was showing his film about Alaskan adventures, and Fred Bear stayed afterwards, after the lecture, to talk to Art Young, and Art then told Fred more about his adventures, and Fred got excited about bow hunting.
When was this, Glenn?
This
roughly?
was in 1934, I believe, somewhere in the early 30s, and prior to that time, Fred was not a bow hunter. Of course, and Fred Bear did a lot with quivers, and he was one of the first to mass produce a leather quiver.
And did he invent the snap-on or the actual, as we know,
bow quiver? Yes.
Okay.
And Bear Archery was the first to do that.
In 1965?
Yes, yes.
And you still, again, we'll see one of these every once in a while. The thing that I like too, Glenn, is looking at these old bows, the Bear Archery bows and the arrows and the broadheads and such, is that there's all kinds of these bows and arrows and broadheads in closets and attics and garages.
Yes.
And they're collector's items.
They are.
Here's somebody else we've got to talk about.
Yes, Howard Hill. We've got a collection there of Howard Hill. Now that fella shot a heavy bow. They were all 100-pound plus bows, and he was truly a unique individual.
And you know, speaking of promoters, he was another great promoter of archery.
Glenn,
and
of course, in his workshop in Seattle, Washington, and working on a longbow. And it's kind of unique because when we moved the museum from Seattle to Chatfield here, we brought. We took a skill saw and sawed off the end off of his workbench. Made a lot of bows, and but probably more. He's more widely known as building the St. Charles quiver. And it was a back quiver. And there's two different varieties of St. Charles quiver that we have there.
And you still see guys wearing those
we
today.
Do, yes.
You know, it's a great quiver.
In the back part here, of course, we've got a number of different exhibits here of different archery and artifacts, including a display here from the Archery Hall of Fame. And this is something that the Hall of Fame has kind of partnered with the Pope and Young Club in promoting archery and bow hunting.
I see. So it lists all the different individuals that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, yes.
There's a lot of famous names, a lot of names that jump right out at you, and a lot of names that many people, you know, wouldn't recognize.
Well, along this wall here is, of course, our collection of broadheads, and we start out kind of the older ones are down to the far end, and these are the more modern ones on this end. But like you say, they are quite similar. Maybe in this next case right here.
Oh, there you go.
This one right here, it kind of reminds one of an apple core, you know, taking the core out of an apple. Another kind of unique one is this one right here, and it's kind of nicknamed the pizza cutter.
Yep.
You know, because you can kind of visualize that it looks like something that right here. It's called a giant bear, and Fred Bear ended up that he only made a few of those, and he made them before he went to British Columbia on a grizzly hunt. The one that he did for American Sportsman.
Yeah. Okay.
And so far as I know, there's only two in existence right now, and we have one of them.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. I've never seen it.
Of course, the other razor heads are common. Together a collection of heads and horns, and in fact, this whitetail up here is unique. That was the first world record non-typical whitetail deer, and it was shot in 1956 by Don Vest. Items from Art Young family. A camera of his, a movie camera that they ended up taking the film in Alaskan Adventures film in, and that we talked about earlier.
Just a bit different than what we're using today.
Yes, yes. A few unique heads that Art Young made. One of them it was called the rhino head, and they ended up, before they went to Africa, they made up 10 of these huge, huge broadheads. And it ended up that they lost 8 of them. They ended up bringing, only 2 of them came back from Africa. And we have both of them here. So that's kind of a unique thing for our museum. Well, something that we wanted to do here in the museum was to start a collection of heads and horns. And right now we have 24 of the 28 different species of North American big game animals. From the first area where the dioramas are, we were kind of telling the history of bow hunting. And then there's kind of a collector's area where we are showing the broadheads and the bows. And then there's the animals, the conservation part.
I invite any bow hunter, any archer that has any interest in this sport at all, or just like to take a look into the past, make the trip to Chatfield, Minnesota. Come see Glenn, get to tour, because it's a great place. And again, if you have any interest at all in this sport, this is a must-do tour. And I want to thank you, Glenn, for taking the time to tour us through and educate me, because I've learned a lot today, and I'm going to spend a little time just wandering around and trying to educate myself some more.
But thank you very much, Tom.
And thanks to the Pope and Young Club for having us.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom.